Hello everyone, my name is PrdBlackWatch, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at 5 different tips that I personally feel would have benefited me when I started playing the game, and I definitely think will benefit you, either if you're a starting player or if you've been playing for a little while and just want some extra ideas to push you along your way. I think these will. So the first one is to give all the operators a chance, and obviously it's difficult for some people if you don't have the money or you haven't put in the time to unlock all of the DLC operators. You're going to be slightly more limited with this, but ultimately the vanilla operators are all still there, and they're all still varying levels of good, but they're still the ones that you see in almost every game to date. There's a reason why vanilla operators haven't dropped off of the board completely, and that's because they were built with the fundamentals of Siege in mind, and they've still managed to fill those roles excellently. And the key here is not to just look at videos that tell you who to play first and then play them. By all means give them a bash, but don't close your horizons to playing other characters. And that leads into my second point, which is that you should always give different roles a try. Don't just anchor. Lots of people who are giving you advice when you start playing the game, they'll advise you to be the anchor at the start. But there comes a point where that stops being useful to you, because one of the strongest elements of Siege's focus is on the maps and the map design, and knowing those maps gives you an edge over everyone else who's in the game. And the only way you're going to learn those maps is, one, as an attacker, pushing from different positions and learning how the outside corresponds to the inside, but two, playing as a defender and roaming outside of the sites that you're defending. If you're just sitting inside sight all the time, then you're only going to know what that site looks like. Instead, you should be out there giving roaming a go, because it's not that scary. It's definitely more intimidating than sitting on site, but once you get used to it, and the more you learn the maps, the more comfortable you become, the more fun you'll have, because roaming is incredibly fun. Same with semi-roaming as someone like Smoke or Valkyrie or Legion. Just give them all a shot, and don't be afraid to put that pressure on your shoulders, especially if you're just playing casual at the start. The third point, it kind of ties in with the last 2 points as well, and that is that you should learn the operator icons. It's a small detail, I know, but when you're going through, especially if you've got some of the standard operators who will be in the same CTU sometimes, if you have the likes of a Bandit and a Jaeger in the same place, it doesn't take long to know that Bandit has a lightning bolt and Jaeger has a spider's web. So just go through the operators, try and put an image to a name, and that way if you see them pop up when your teammates have spotted them, you'll know straight away this is that guy. And then just try and associate the knowledge of those particular gadgets that are related to the operators. Know that if there's a Jaeger, there'll be an ADS, and that throwing grenades will be more difficult. Know that if there's a Maverick, you can't really be safe sitting against a wall without listening and keeping an eye on them to make sure that he's not burning down the walls and snapping you. Another point, number 4, is that you should learn the visual cues of each operator. Now, this one takes a little bit more time, but certain operators from certain CTUs, especially as I say the vanillas, because they tend to have the same people sitting on the same team, rather than the likes of, say, Buck and Frost, who some people have confused in the past, but ultimately one will be your teammate and one won't, so you should tell the difference. But if you have, say, a Mute and a Smoke, or a Sledge and a Thatcher, they all have very similar uniforms, but there are certain things that give away the differences between them. So for Thatcher versus Sledge, Sledge obviously has a mask that shows his eyes with some skin around them. That's the first thing. The next thing is that you'll see the silhouette of his hammer's crowbar attachment hanging over his shoulder. And you'll see it just poking out. It'll be a little bit of the handle that will poke out from one of his shoulders. That's another thing that distinguishes the two. And then the last thing would be the vest. Now the vest on Thatcher, it's very clean looking, and it has a little ribbon from one of the medals that he has, whereas Sledge's one is covered in pouches and things. So that's some of the ways to tell those two characters apart. And also, Sledge is bald and doesn't have anything covering his bald head, whereas Thatcher's whole head is covered by the mask and by balaclava. With Rook and Doc, Doc has one shoulder on most of his uniforms that will be white, and he also has no arm protectors. He has full gloves. They're latex gloves that cover all of his hand, including all of his fingers. And he has defibrillators on his chest. Rook, on the other hand, has a piece of silver tape across the front strike face of his armour. So it's basically a piece of duct tape across the chest, and I believe there's one in the back as well. He'll also have the mouth of his balaclava open. He'll have half gloves rather than full gloves, and on his left arm he'll have a forearm plate protecting it. So those are the differences between those two operators. Between Smoke and Mute, with Smoke he has obviously the full gas mask extended down. It'll have some tubes running down from the side of the mask and out to the back, where his most distinctive feature is, and that's his respirator. So it's a little separate respirator unit that sits on the back of the operator model. It has two filter looking things. It's just a big black pack. It's not the easiest thing to spot, but that's the quickest way to tell the two of them apart. Another way to tell them apart is that Smoke's gloves tend to be quite shiny, like a sort of vinyl PVC, whereas Mute's gloves tend to be a bit more matted, and the fingertips are a slightly different colour, usually a grey, versus the black of the rest of the hands. And obviously, Mute, when you see his mask, will have the cross section, and it's just one solid goggle, whereas Smoke's goggles are two separate eyepieces, similar to the GP5 Russian gas mask. And other than that, the rest of the operators are fairly easy to tell apart. Tachanka has a very distinctive helmet versus Kapkan, and the camouflage patterns are slightly different as well. So you'll see, when you see the two of them, it's hood versus helmet. One with Jaeger and Bandit is that Jaeger has a helmet that has a much larger visor, so you won't be able to see his eyes in most configurations, whereas Bandit has no visor other than the ballistic visor that covers it. He doesn't have any goggles over his eyes. And you'll also notice that on his jacket he'll have a stripe down the arms, whereas Jaeger does not have a stripe on the arms. And in the legs, Jaeger's jeans are clean, whereas Bandit's jeans will have some tears in them. There's some other minor details that differentiate them, but they're not that major. And generally speaking, it's quite easy to tell all the other operators apart, including the DLC operators. The only one that some people will have an issue with is the two operators from the Chimera season. Those are Lion and Finka. Lion will have a backpack, which is huge and extends way outside of the model, and Finka does not have a backpack, and you can also see her face, whereas Lion's face is covered by a balaclava. And the final tip, just to round this off, is that it pays a lot to listen. Now, I'm not just talking about when you're going about and making sure that you're paying attention to footsteps and stuff. I mean when you shoot people. Now, this is all to do with the last three tips that we've talked about here. And that's that ID is one of the strongest things that you can pull out of the information pool of Rainbow Six. If you know what someone looks like, what their operator icon looks like, and the last thing, which is what we're talking about, what they sound like, then you can call out based on very minimal information. Just a flash of an identifying characteristic and bang, I know who this person is. Or if you hear a specific pain sound, you know who they are. So it's the kind of thing, if you get a tag on someone but you didn't see them, then you listen. Castle, for example, has an incredibly distinctive pain sound. You'll pick up on it very quickly. So listen to the people that you're shooting when they die, learn what they sound like, try and memorize that sound, so then you can make those calls without more information. And also listen to yourself. If you pick a certain character, you're going to make some sound eventually if you get shot. So listen to what they sound like, and then you'll pick it up. They tend to be very distinctive. There's only a few that will cross over. Tends to be the women. They can sometimes muddle a little bit between Valkyrie and Ashe. There's a little bit of crossover. But other than that, usually there is a decent distinction, and you'll pick it up from their voice lines and from the way that they shout. So get used to it. Listen to that kind of stuff, and I guarantee it will make a difference in your play. So that's my sort of starter tips. I'm going to come out with another video to do with more sort of medium tips as you progress a little bit more, which is going to break down more of the stuff to do with sound and various other things. So hopefully I won't take 40 years to make it, unlike these usual ones. But anyway guys, hope you've enjoyed this video. Please leave a comment about what you think it's like, because it has been a while since I made a video, and I just want to see if I'm back on track again or something. So anyway, take care. Do svidania. Bye bye.